You know, sometimes people say the darndest things if you listen carefully. I could spend days exploring some funny things that people say. I mean, there's so much out there that's absolutely hysterical. Here from a variety of sources are some words that people have actually uttered. If at first you don't succeed, skydiving definitely is not for you. And then this phrase we use often in our pastoral care at the chapel: cheer up, the worst is yet to come. No, I'm kidding. Just two more. I don't know who came up with this one, but when you have a cough, eat a box of laxatives. That way, very soon you'll be over your cough because you won't want to take a chance. And the last one: a foolish man tells a woman to stop talking. A wise man tells a woman her mouth is extremely beautiful when her lips are closed. Well, for a long time, one of my favorite sayings has been the phrase out of whack. And I probably like the phrase out of whack because sometimes I feel that way. Now, the word whack itself has an interesting history. Probably first showed up in the 1800s, and the word originally reflected the sound made when an object is struck hard, whack. However, people that study words and phrases suggest that over time, whack actually meant to receive your share of proceeds from a criminal act. Hence, if you were in a state of fine whack, you got what was coming to you. For some reason, however, the word took on the opposite meaning, and the phrase out of whack was developed, and it now means simply to be out of order, not functioning right, to be askew, or to be in bad shape. And as I said, I'm drawn to the phrase because in my life journey, sometimes being out of whack is a good description of how I'm feeling. Sometimes my heart feels out of whack. In fact, there are passages where my heart just hurts or feels wrecked because of what I'm aware of is sad or tragic or just upsetting. It's actually good for our hearts to be out of whack now and then, and especially in response to things that are unjust or tragic. It means we're human. We have a heart. We care. We have compassion. Honestly, though, there are other moments in which my heart is out of whack and how I'm feeling, and I know that when I'm feeling out of whack, that it's actually a signal for me to pause, to hit the reset button, and to get back on track. For example, when I'm feeling out of whack because I'm holding a grudge, or staying in a place of anger, or feeling judgmental, or having a hard time forgiving, or behaving in ways that aren't consistent with Jesus, my heart feels out of whack. It just doesn't feel right. And that's a good thing. Such out of whack feelings can motivate us to make some necessary changes. I think that in our journey with Jesus, you and I are called to be attentive to our hearts and, when necessary, work to change our hearts from being more about ourselves and much more about Jesus and having the heart of Jesus. Said another way, much of how we act, what we say, how we conduct ourselves, how we respond to other people, these are all matters of the heart. And because this is the case, I think we need to do some heart checks now and then. I know that if I can think of it and I ask myself, where is my heart in this situation? Where's my heart in this deal? Where's my heart in this relationship? Sometimes it leads me to a change of heart and a change of behavior. Now, our hearts and what's inside of them is a massive topic in Scripture. Hearts are all over the Old Testament. Hearts are all over the New Testament as well, both the Old and the New. And the New Testament describes the heart as the essence of who we are, the place of our reason and will and emotion. That our heart is the place that God works to change us. And that it's what is within our hearts that causes us to do, say, and act the way we do. You can tell where a person's heart is by where and in what ways he or she is placing his or her energy. You can see where a person's heart is. That tells me there's a lot of troubled hearts right now in our country. Hearts are all over Scripture. Here is just a sampling from Scripture. Prophet Jeremiah says, our hearts can deceive us and lead us astray. Be careful. Paul writes in Romans, God knows our hearts. Samuel writes, people judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Jesus said, where our hearts are all depends on what we treasure. He also said, so many people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Jesus was also crystal clear, as I mention every single Sunday, that the entire purpose of life, everything, is love, to love God and love people, and that is a complete heart matter. We change when our hearts change, and God knows this, which is why God spends most of his time working on our hearts. Now, most of us know firsthand that a change of heart can be the toughest thing, can't it? It's not easy. Often we really need God's help in creating heart changes. So this is not an easy subject, and I don't want to make it seem at all that this is a piece of cake, because it's not. It is rigorous, it is tough, it is challenging. And often we need a lot of help in getting a heart change. Also, matters of the heart are ongoing. It's not like one day we arrive and say, my heart's right, I'm done, I'm good. It's a life process, day in and day out. Well, for a moment, let's jump into our reading from Matthew today. Here, certainly, Jesus gets into some rubber meets the road topics. Anger, adultery, divorce, vows. All of these things are matters of the heart. So let's briefly touch on each one. Actually, each could be a whole series, but let's just look at each one briefly. Anger. Well, it's a God-given emotion. King David was angry. Nehemiah was angry about the oppression of the poor. Jesus was often angry, furious, ticked off over those who were self-serving yet supposedly were people of faith. There is absolutely such a thing as righteous anger. I'm angry about all kinds of things. Racism, child abuse, a lack of just very simple, straightforward honesty. It's just not that hard. But Scripture is clear. Anger is never to be an end state, even righteous anger. Anger causes people to do very bad things and to sin, and anger and sin are very closely tied. In the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, is the well-known story of Cain killing his brother Abel. And it reads, anger, watch out. Sin is crouching at your door, waiting to get you. And the Hebrew here, we're supposed to think of an image of anger waiting to pounce on us as a result of or sin waiting to pounce on us as a result of our anger. Anger can be very dangerous. It can degrade the essence of who we are. And frankly, if we stay in a state of anger, it's like drinking gasoline. That said, I want to repeat, there is such a thing as righteous anger. Righteous anger is okay if we don't stay there, but respond to the sources of what is creating the anger, work to make changes in the unjust situation, and then leave the anger behind. So if we're angry about hunger, do something about hunger, get engaged in hunger organizations, feed the hungry, and then leave the anger behind. Our reading today really has much more to say about being an angry person, a reactive person, a harshly judgmental person, a person that spews anger, remaining in a state of anger without doing anything to resolve it, and what's causing it, and a lack of a willingness to seek reconciliation. Jesus just turns the volume up on this one. Because here Jesus is not just teaching about anger, he's teaching about reconciliation. He says that if we know somebody has an issue with us, that we need to seek the person out and make things right with the person. We need to be the one that seeks reconciliation. And from where I sit, that takes a lot of humility and a lot of honesty, along with some really tough heart work. Jesus reconciles us to God. So Jesus is saying in this teaching, I've reconciled you to me. So when you come to worship me, remember to go reconcile yourselves with those who have a problem with you. Many retain anger too long without seeking healing, and this is what the reading's getting at. Nowhere in Scripture, I just want to say, does it say that it's okay to be a hothead and walk around angry and ticked off, spewing anger all the time. And I believe the lesson here for all of us is that when we are angry, and we all get angry, and we all have righteous anger, it's a signal, it's a cue, and it's an alarm for all of us to ask some hard heart questions. What's this anger telling me about my heart? What heart work do I need to be doing here? How do I need God to be helping me with his heart work? Because God didn't create me to stay in this place of caustic anger. Hard questions. A quick caveat. Sometimes seeking reconciliation with another person is not possible and can in fact be dangerous. Reconciling with an abusive spouse that has a problem with us is not what this reading is about. And there are monsters out there that are filled with evil, that hurt us and have issues with us. And it can be dangerous for us to seek reconciliation in those cases. Jesus died for us on the cross. We're not called to die on the cross for another. Well, next, Jesus jumps into adultery and divorce, both of which also are matters of the heart. Now, a caveat before I get into this. Divorce is one of the most wrenching, tough, upending occurrences that leaves people feeling isolated, confused, depressed, afraid, unclear about who they are or what the future holds, economic messes and children. It's just complicated. My response, and the response of Snowmass Chapel in response to divorce, is always one of non-judgment, compassion, prayer, love, and doing everything we can to bring about healing. Also, you need to know that I believe, and I think Scripture makes it clear, that sometimes, frankly, divorce is a faithful thing. No black and white statement should ever be made about divorce, as every divorce is different and there are often layers of nuance. That said, there are indeed divorces that happen because a person is acting in ways that are self-serving and selfish and sinful. We need to remember that part of what Jesus was dealing here in these readings, in his teachings here, was that when a woman was divorced in that culture, women in those days had almost zero rights. They were not on equal footing with men. I mean, that's not the case now, but think of what it would have been the case 2,000 years ago. So Jesus is basically saying, don't divorce and put a woman in the situation of having no rights. It's a catastrophic thing to do. And he was angry at people who were taking advantage of legal loopholes that left women in a bad place, in a bad way. It's also important to note that Jesus' teaching about divorce here is embedded with teachings about lust, which is a matter of the heart. Feeling lust is one thing, but acting upon it is an entirely different matter. Jesus uses as strong of language as he ever uses in any teaching here, reminding us that putting lust into action is not okay. All heart matters. And for those of us who are in marriages or partnerships, when our hearts are feeling askew, we are compelled to ask ourselves some tough questions. Where's my heart in this relationship? Do I need a change of heart? Do I need God to change my heart? What is my heart telling me about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling? And then finally, Jesus gets into issues of commitments or vows. This one breaks my heart, as do the other two, but it breaks my heart because we just seem to be in an era in which truth is just couched. Commitments are thrown away. And that's not a political statement, just to remind you all. It's of all people, all persuasions. Here Jesus says, when you say you're going to do something, just do it. It's not hard. Yes means yes. No means no. You don't need all these addendums. Be honest and truthful. It's really straightforward. It's very, very easy to be truthful and transparent. Honesty and truth and saying yes and no is not complicated. And Jesus says when you make it complicated, it's because evil is working on you. So if we want to say yes and we have that feeling that we want to do this, it's time for a heart check. When we're doubting a commitment we've made, we need to do a heart check. We've explored Jesus' teachings, these very few teachings in Matthew 5, and just for a very brief moment, I want to look at how Scripture describes a healthy heart. I think we know what an askew heart is, but what's a healthy heart look like? Scripture makes it clear that a healthy heart is a heart that is at peace. It's at peace. Vision taking a long, deep breath in and exhaling. That's what a healthy heart feels like. It's peaceful. It's not conflicted. It's at peace. Now, this word's not used in Scripture, but the concept is there. A healthy heart is a Teflon heart. Just little stings and things just kind of roll off, and there's non-reactivity. A healthy heart is humble. I don't know everything. I don't want to pretend to know everything. I don't want to assume I know it all. A healthy heart is humble. A healthy heart listens more than speaks. A healthy heart focuses on building trust, not creating fear. A healthy heart is vulnerable and open and tender and compassionate. A healthy heart is pure, meaning we have right motives. A healthy heart is deeply connected to God and leaves judgment up to God and is not hung up on what's fair all the time. And a healthy heart is one that is filled with a profound love of God and people. There's so much hard-heartedness now. All over the place, all persuasions. Breaks my heart. We need to get back to having the heart of Jesus. To step outside of the fray and have the heart of Jesus. To step out of the arguments and the divisiveness and the anger and the name-calling and have the heart of Jesus. And I want to wrap up with this. Long ago, there was a fellow named Ezekiel. He was both a priest and a prophet, and he was around when the city of Jerusalem was attacked and fell to the people of Babylon. People were taken into exile. It was a terrible time. And while he had a lot to say, one thing he made clear to the people was this message of profound hope. Ezekiel writes, God will give you a new heart. God will give you a tender and responsive heart. God will fill you with his Spirit. I want us all to personalize that. We all need new hearts. God will give us a new heart. God will give me a new heart. God will give you a new heart. God will give me a responsive, tender heart. God will give you a tender, responsive heart. God will put his Spirit within you and within me. God is the ultimate heart changer. Ezekiel uttered these words to the people who had the hardest hearts around. Ask God, wherever it is that your heart's askew, to give you a new heart, a tender heart, a responsive heart. So I invite you to spend some time today, tomorrow, this week, with God, who's loving and forgiving and healing, to do some heart checks. Where's your heart? Where's my heart? Amen.